All right, welcome. We are going to crack the code on stock. I mean, you hear that word thrown around all the time, right? But what does it actually mean to own a tiny piece of some huge company? Well, let's dive in and get some clear, simple answers. So this question, it really gets to the heart of what investing is all about. And the answer, when you boil it down, is pretty cool. See, you're not just buying some number that blinks on a screen. You're buying a real claim, an actual piece of ownership in a business. And you know, this classic analogy of a pie, it's honestly the perfect way to picture it. If you think of a company as a whole pie, then every single share of stock is just one slice. So the more slices you have, the bigger your piece of that pie is. At its core, it's really that straightforward. Okay, so let's take that pie idea and get a little more official with it. This is the foundation, just making sure we're all starting on the same page. So here it is, the more textbook definition. Stock is ownership. Simple as that. And that ownership gives you, the shareholder, a legal claim on two really important things. The company's assets, everything it owns, and its earnings, the profits it makes. That right there, that's the bedrock idea. Okay, now this is where things get really interesting because, well, not all stock is the same. As an investor, you've got a choice to make between two main types, common and preferred. Let's break down what that choice actually means for you. All right, first up, we've got the one you hear about all the time, common stock. This is the standard, the default ticket to the game. When you hear on the news that a company's stock is up or down, they're almost always talking about this stuff, and it comes with a very important power. So what's that big power? It's voting. As a common stockholder, you actually get a say in major decisions, like who sits on the board of directors. But for most people, the big draw is the potential for huge growth if the company really takes off. Now, you might get dividends, but there's no guarantee. It's kind of that classic high-risk, high-reward deal. Okay, so on the flip side, you've got preferred stock. And just like the name says, it gets, well, preferential treatment. Think of it as a whole different class of ownership. It's really designed for investors who care a little less about explosive growth and more about stability. Basically, it bumps you up in the pecking order when it's time for the company to pay out. And I love this analogy. Think of it like a VIP pass. While all the common stockholders are waiting in the general admission line, preferred stockholders get to walk right to the front when the company starts handing out its profits. And this really gets to the fundamental trade-off, right? Preferred stockholders get those fixed, reliable dividends, and they get them first. If a company skips a payment, a lot of the time those dividends add up and have to be paid out later. They even get priority if the company goes out of business. But, and this is a big but, you usually give up your voting rights. So let's just put them head-to-head to make it super clear. Common stock, you get a vote, but you're second in line for dividends and pretty much last if the company liquidates. Preferred stock is the total opposite. Usually no vote, but you're first in line for dividends and have a much better spot if things go south. It's really that classic choice. Do you want control or do you want security? All right, so we've been looking at this from the investor's point of view. Let's pull back the curtain for a second and check out the company's side of things, the tools they use to manage all these shares behind the scenes. You know, every company has this official rule book. It's called a corporate charter. And inside that book, there's a really critical number, the amount of authorized stock. This sets the absolute maximum number of shares that company is legally allowed to create. It's like the absolute ceiling on the number of shares that can ever exist. And this is cool because it brings us right back to the power of those common stockholders. A company can't just snap its fingers and create more shares. Nope. To raise that authorized limit, they have to get permission from their owners, the shareholders, by holding a formal vote. Okay, now for a really fascinating idea, treasury stock. This is what happens when a company actually goes out onto the open market and buys back its own shares, just like you or I would. These shares that it buys back are then held by the company itself in what's called its treasury. The whole process is actually a pretty simple three-step life cycle. First, the company issues stock out to the public, to investors. Then, later on, for different strategic reasons, it buys some of those shares back. And finally, those repurchased shares just sit in the company's treasury, waiting for whatever comes next. So you might be asking, why would a company even do this? Well, it has two main options. It can sell those shares again later to raise some more money, or it can just cancel them completely. This reduces the total number of shares out there, which can actually make all the other shares a little more valuable. It's often seen as a sign that management is really confident in the company's future. Whew, okay, we've covered a lot of ground. So let's bring it all back home and really focus on what all this means for you as an investor, or even just as someone who's curious. Let's boil it all down to what really matters.
So here's your quick and dirty cheat sheet. If you're looking for long-term growth and you want to have a voice in how the company is run, common stock is probably your game. If you would rather have a steady, more predictable income stream and take on less risk, then you'd look at preferred. And just always remember the company side of it. Authorized stock is their legal limit, and treasury stock is the tool they use to manage their supply of shares.
When it all comes down to it, here's the most crucial point. The type of stock you own completely defines your relationship with that company. Are you an owner with a vote who's in it for the growth? Or are you more like a lender, focused on getting that stable priority payment? The kind of stock you hold answers that question.
And that really just leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Now that you know the trade-offs between having a voice and getting a guaranteed payout, between taking on risk for growth and playing it safe for security, what kind of shareholder would you want to be? Something to think about.